Previously on Avatar.
Alright, so that's at least most of the controversy around Rey covered. So yeah, now let's get on to the lighthearted shit. Let's get on to the comics themselves. So, Boyfriends, from a storytelling perspective, is very mid. Like, there's not a lot going on in the comic itself, which is kind of expected because it is of the slice of life genre. An aspect of the comic that I feel like too many people are overlooking when talking about it. Slice of life, for anyone unfamiliar, is a genre in a multitude of media that basically focus around characters and their everyday lives and the hijinks that come around because of their everyday lives. I've come to realize that in webcomics specifically, slice of life has two primary depictions. So depiction A is more common around comics that are focusing on real people and, their day-to-day lives. The comics are often short and sweet and really focus on being both relatable and funny. There's not meant to be continuity or really a storyline. It is essentially just a highlight reel and compilation of moments from this person's day or their lives. It's a very simple form of storytelling, but when done right, very effective and very entertaining. Depiction B is one I see primarily in comics that are focusing on fictional characters. Because, the characters aren't real people, there's a lot more situations you can put them in and a lot more you can do for them in terms of character. So oftentimes I see that these comics will actively focus on character and character development and character relation. Continuity absolutely exists within these comics, with certain plot points or storylines coming back or being relevant in other chapters. And obviously, because these comics are slice of life, they absolutely still follow, the day-to-day lives of their characters and don't focus too much on story. It's essentially the same as the first depiction, with the main difference being the focus on the characters themselves and their relationships with other characters in a more in-depth and rounded way. And honestly, I think it's very obvious what Rey intended for Boyfriends to be. Like, the comic was absolutely meant to be just like a bunch of tooth-rotting fluff and cute moments between the characters. There was never really an intention to add a deep story or an underlying message, which is something that I feel a lot of people, myself included, walked into the story thinking they were getting. Another review on YouTube had mentioned that if you're looking for an introspective, deep look into polyamorous relationships and, how they form and even issues that could come about within them, you're not getting that here, because Boyfriends wasn't meant to be a conversational piece. It was meant to be, okay, here's a polyamorous relationship, here are some characters, now watch them be cute. And a lot of people who enjoy the comics find this lack of plot to be very comforting, and in fact one of the main reasons why they enjoy reading the comics in the first place. Because the comics don't feature a lot of conflict or deep storylines, it's kind of just something mindless that you can scroll through and go, oh, that's a little cute, that's a little funny, that's a little me. If you're into story, then yeah, you aren't really getting that here. It's mindless entertainment, and on Reddit I've seen a few people comment that Boyfriends is essentially comfort food to them because it doesn't focus on the hardships of being in a marginalized group, because admittedly a lot of content that focuses on marginalized groups of people, specifically in this case queer people, there really is a surplus of content which focuses on the hardships of being gay and why being gay sucks and why it's so hard. And sometimes you don't want to see sad gay people. And there has been a constant call for more positive queer content, and Boyfriends kind of came in with the intent of being that. But that doesn't excuse it from being mid. And it's not like this kind of media and portrayal of relationships doesn't exist in straight media or in genuinely any other form. I mean, tons of popular webcomics are about some girl and her boyfriend or some couple doing cutesy couple things. Is my bar for gay media just so much higher than straight media, to the point where I feel that all gay media has to be some kind of conversational piece where we're really discussing the ins and outs and struggles of being within a community? No, Boyfriends just doesn't deliver. Like, I've seen people bring up that exact point, that people don't like Boyfriends despite other comics doing the same thing. I've come to realize that the way Boyfriends presents itself itself is just not in a way that I find particularly interesting. See, with slice of life, what they lack in, story and conflict, they often make up for with relatability and humor. And Boyfriends just doesn't. One of the major things that I honestly found intolerable about the comics is the style of humor that's in it. Because it's slice of life, I expected a lot of situational comedy. Just an everyday situation maybe being dramatized or being exaggerated a bit solely for comedic effect. And Boyfriends doesn't really do that. The jokes in Boyfriends are often very, predictable because, like I said, there's not much in terms of characters nor story, so oftentimes whenever a character is doing a setup for a joke, you can kind of see where it's coming from for miles away because it all focuses on very basic humor. And if it's not focusing on some basic humor, it's focusing on popular meme culture and quirky lingo, which I can't stand. It's my biggest, personally, it's my biggest pet peeve in any written media when the author tries to include memes or meme culture because, meme culture moves fast. I understand that I'm not the target demographic for this comic, and based on the humor alone and how it's written, I can only assume, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, that the target audience for this comic are middle schoolers to high school freshmen. And I say that because if it was 2016 and I was in middle school and this comic had come out, I think I would have been eating it up. If this was on Tumblr, I would have been reblogging it. I would have been loving this. But now that I've grown and changed as a person, I'm not. I'll give it the relatability because on occasion Boyfriends does manage to deliver with being relatable. And I can see where some people would find this comic enjoyable and relatable in terms of humor and story. The humor in the comic is just mid. It's mid. Like everything else in this comic, it's mid. Okay, I've been referring to the story and the plot for the past part of this video, so I realized I did not even introduce the characters themselves. So the characters in Boyfriends are prep, nerd, jock, and goth. They're all named after the archetype they're meant to represent, but the characters do in fact have real names. I'll put that on screen somewhere. But the characters do have real names. These have been confirmed by the author, but the author doesn't really use them in any material relating to the characters. In the comics itself, they don't call the characters by name. They often just draw a photo of the character in place of where the name would be. This bothers some people, but to me, I don't really care. It's not totally uncommon for media that utilizes stereotypes to name the characters after the stereotypes or archetypes that they're meant to represent. The fact that the characters are named after stereotypes isn't what gets me, it's the fact that the characters suck. And I didn't expect any serious character development or motive or internal or external conflicts, because after I realized that the plot was non-existent, I was okay, so I'm just gonna lower my expectations all the way down. We're not gonna get our hopes up, and it's a good thing I didn't, because wow. The characters are just very surface level is what I've come to realize. The issue isn't that the characters aren't named after stereotypes or the fact that they're meant to even represent them. It's that the characters themselves just refuse to go beyond their stereotypes. Oftentimes when characters are based off of things like archetypes and stereotypes, it's often used as a ground floor, as a basis for the character. And it's up to the author to choose what direction they want the characters to go. Do they want the characters to completely play into the stereotype? Or some want to defy stereotypes entirely and go, people are more than, how they present themselves. And while I was trying to figure out what Boyfriends was trying to do, I think it's about defying the stereotypes, but I don't know, because oftentimes when media is about defying stereotypes, it's about looking at the characters beyond their physical appearance, and how you would box them in when you first see them. But the thing is, Boyfriends, the appearance of the boyfriends and their archetype plays literally no part in anything. There's very few scenes in the comic itself that play into the idea of defying your stereotypes. In terms of defying stereotypes, I guess it's the nerd archetype is often seen as undesirable characters, but oh look, this nerd is the most desired character and the most protected and beloved out of his polycule. Or oh look, the jock character isn't just a big guy who only thinks about sports and parties. He also likes to bake, and it just feels like they didn't do enough with the stereotypes to the point where the characters had to be named after them. If they referred to the characters in comic by name instead of by the stereotype, I'm assuring you that nothing would have changed, because the stereotypes play literally no role in anything other than their appearance. It honestly does feel like a missed opportunity, because there was so much that Ray could have done. With the fact that the characters are all meant to be playing off of archetypes or stereotypes or whatever, there's so much that Ray could have done with this, but they just didn't, for the purpose of keeping the comic cute and fluffy and sweet. And I'm not saying that to have conflict in the story means that you need to have the characters fist fight every 2 minutes or have them be like discriminated against, because conflict can be minor and it can be funny. I just wish that the comic did more with the fact that the characters are stereotypes other than have that be their names. Because like I said, this could have been something super interesting, and this has been done before in a shit ton of different media. It's just that Boyfriends doesn't deliver in the way that they do. And obviously, I can't talk about Boyfriends without talking about the two biggest factors as to why people don't like the comic, and that is fetishization as well as sexualization. Hi, it's post-recording Leah, and I'm just stepping in because in the latter part of this recording I kind of fell off and did not articulate a single sentence properly, so I wanted to step in for a moment and talk about what I didn't get to in the latter part of the video, which was fetishization in Boyfriends, because this is such a large part of the infamy that this comic holds. To me, the argument isn't so much of Ray is a gay fetishist as it is that Ray's way of writing characters is perpetuating stereotypes and gay fetishist ideals with the way that the characters in his comics are portrayed. I want to preface this by saying that Ray himself is trans, masc, and MLM. And while I'm not going to go in depth with the can you fetishize a community that you yourself are a part of argument, because that's a completely different conversation entirely, I want to stress that because of his identity, it doesn't mean that he is exempt from creating negative or poor portrayals of characters who share his identity or orientation. That being said, I myself am not a gay man, and because I'm not, I scoured the internet in an attempt to find any gay male opinions on this comic and the way that the characters are written, especially in terms of fetishization. And like in the last video, all conversation about this was extremely vague and gave me almost nothing to go off of, but I scraped the bottom of the barrel, and what I was able to pick up is that the conversation of fetishization in Boyfriends mainly surrounds the more feminine male characters within the comic, primarily the nerd and the prep character. People will criticize the prep character because he falls into the stereotypical gay male concept, and whilst the nerd character's entire purpose, like in the comic, is solely to be provocative fan service bait. And characters aside, people are also pointing out that the way that the comic is written and presents their characters is in a very early Tumblr-esque, uwu, small bean gay agenda. Like that era of Tumblr where people were infantilizing gay people and calling them things like small beans and kind of just uwuifying the LGBT community. And a lot of people are making that connection in Boyfriends because of the way the characters are written, and I low-key don't blame them.
Cuddled with him and gave him
hot chalky uwu.
I've also found that this is a kind of a controversial point, that people are accusing Ray of trying to appeal to fujoshis and gay fetishists on Webtoon, because Webtoon houses a lot of BL content written by women with the intent of it being also consumed by women. And I can't say that Ray's comic is actively trying to push for fujoshis or whatever to consume the comic, but I can say that regardless, they are consuming the content, and it's just that the cutesy gay uwu shit that he's doing is also kind of just overlapping with them. Everyone will say it's fetishization, and then they won't go into enough detail for me to really understand it. I want to end this video by saying that Boyfriends just isn't good. The characters have no real personality, and even as a slice of life comic, it misses the mark. Do I think that Boyfriends is the worst piece of queer media that I've ever seen? Unfortunately, no. But is it the best? Absolutely not. And even while I don't like Boyfriends, I feel like the hate train for this comic has really overhyped how bad it would be. So when people actually go into reading the comic and they just find, oh, it's kind of cringe, it creates this argument that didn't have to exist in the first place. Yeah, the comic is cringy and there's definitely things worth critiquing, within the comic itself, but it's also not like hell spawn content. I hope that in this video I did a good job at trying to articulate my points in regards to critiquing this comic. But comment down below. Tell me your opinions on this comic, because I absolutely love reading other people's perspectives and seeing how other people have perceived it. Whether you love this comic or you hate it, I want to hear your thoughts on it, because like I said, it's super interesting and I am all ears. Also, thank you so much for 100 subscribers. Holy shit. I'm patiently waiting for YouTube to let me customize my URL, but you should still subscribe so I can hit my next goal, which is unlocking the community tab. Okay, bye.